May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. The past few weeks have led to today. In fact, almost a month ago, we started the jury selection process. But all of that brings us to today. And what is today? Today is the day that Botham Shem Jean, his murderer, is going to be punished for unjustly taking his life. We're in the punishment phase now. You 12 will be charged with assigning and assessing this defendant's punishment, and you'll have to come up with a unanimous decision as to how many years should this defendant serve in prison for murdering Botham. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? You've got to learn today a little bit over the past few days about how bright Botham was, how much his family loved him, his coworkers loved him, practically anyone who's ever met him loved him. And that was only a small glimpse into the life of Bo. You also got to hear from those that love the defendant and the good things that she's done. And in punishment, you get to consider all of this. And you should consider all of this, because now's the time that you make your decision as to what is a just punishment, what is appropriate for the horrible crime that has occurred here. You know, we spent some time talking with Bo, friends, family. They told you how loving he was, how encouraging he was, how helpful he was. He spent a life wanting to help others, and you get to take that into consideration as to who this individual was and how this affects not only the Jean family, but all of us. We all were robbed of Botham and the greatness that he brought to Dallas County. But honestly, who knows what his impact could have truly have been had his life not been taken from him. We also brought you some more information that you might not have been aware of about the defendant and her character. And that's something that you get to take into consideration as well. You know, people only get to see the sides of you that you show them. But who are people when they really trust you? When they really feel like they can trust you, that's who they're going to show you who they truly are. And what did the defendant show us? In State's Exhibit 357, the state presented a copy of an item on social media that the defendant tagged to her Pinterest account. We also presented another piece of evidence that the defendant has saved to her Pinterest account in State's Exhibit 358 and also in 359. And I anticipate that the defense is going to argue that these are dark humor, just jokes, maybe even cop humor. But is this really the kind of things that we want our officers joking about? And not just the memes themselves, but take a look at the comments and what's written down. That will really show you what this defendant had in her heart when no one else was looking. The things that, even if they are a joke, she found funny. But what does she write underneath these? You look at that. But let's say you want to say that these are just jokes, and I get it, because there can be dark humor out there. But there's no joke in these text messages. These text messages to where on September 4th, 2018, 2 days prior to the defendant murdering Bo, she's joking about a racist dog. And she responds, and you can see it in here, and you'll be able to take this exhibit to read it for yourself, that it's okay, I'm the same. That's what this defendant is telling her friends when no one else is looking. And then if you go down a little bit further, I hate everything and everyone but y'all. Who's the y'all she's talking about? Who does this defendant really care about? and then the MLK parade. You got to hear that the defendant was joking about the death of Dr. Martin Luther King, a man who brings so much inspiration to all of us, a man who quite a few individuals, you remember those jury questionnaires when we asked you who you admire the most or who you admire the least? Guess whose name came up? Dr. Martin Luther King. And it should, because he talked about love, equality, justice, not judging a person by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. That's who Dr. Martin Luther King was, and that's why so many people admire him. And so while working the Martin Luther King Day Parade in January of 2018, what did we learn about the defendant? She's mocking his death. And if that's not bad enough, what does the defendant suggest other officers do to people who have gathered to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy? She's suggesting the use of force by police, just push them, or spray or pepper spray in the general area? Is this how we're supposed to be treating people? Is this what it means when we say we want to serve and protect the community? Which community are we talking about? Again, this is punishment. You get to take all of this into consideration, and you get to weigh this evidence. And each one of you can make that determination for yourselves. And last but not least, when that message the defendant sent about "I only care about y'all," we found out that the y'all might not include fellow officers, because the defendant and Martin Rivera seem to have certain thoughts about black officers. I don't know what you do with that. How does that make sense? A fellow brother or sister in blue, but we're going to make a distinction because of the color of their skin. And according to the defendant, they have different way of working, and it shows. Thank you, Judge. Again, these are the things that you get to consider when you, what is a just and appropriate punishment. And you'll have an evidence to take back with you, State's Exhibit number 356. In this exhibit, when you turn to page 6, and start at about 10:30 p.m. on September 8, 2018, you're going to see how the defendant truly showed her remorse for the death of both of them. While his family is planning his funeral, you're going to see what she and Martin Rivera were talking about and what they were planning to do. Is that a remorseful person? You get to decide that. And then lastly, I just want to say about this charge, when it comes to the fine doesn't go to the family. Do not concern yourselves about a fine. In fact, write 0 or none. That fine will not go to the Botham family. You can disregard that. But you'll have to come up with a number unanimously. There's a wide range of punishment for murder here in the state of Texas. 5 to 99 years or life. Some of you may say, this isn't a life case. Some of you may feel differently. Some of you say, this isn't a minimum case, and don't let the defense get up here and disrespect you by telling you that this case is deserving of a minimum punishment. You've heard who Botham was and what he means to his family and all of us. This is not a 5-year, 10-year, or 15-year case. And I'm confident that when you go back there to deliberate, you will assess a just and appropriate punishment.
Counsel, members of the jury. The hardest thing a criminal defense attorney can do after a finding of guilt of his client is addressing a jury, obviously, in the punishment stage. But in doing that, the first thing I want to do is thank you for your deliberations and guilt innocence. We asked you to carefully consider the evidence in this case, and you took your time. It showed that you did that. You sent out notes, you asked for exhibits, and that showed that you were looking at both sides. that you were examining the case. You didn't have to do that, not all juries do. We appreciate that you took the time to do that. You didn't see it our way, but it's in your hands in this case, and we appreciate you took the time and took your oath seriously. Now we reach the punishment stage. And in Texas, it's unique because most states, a judge will assess punishment, but Texas, we let juries do that. And the legislature, for the crime of murder, sets a very wide range of punishment. Very wide range. Minimum 5 years for intentionally killing someone, committing murder, all the way to 99 years or life, and anywhere in between. Now in this case, when we reach the punishment stage, the rules also allow the state of Texas to put in any offense, any bad acts they so choose that are relevant to this case for your consideration. They've done that. They put in some text strings, they put in some things from social media. In this day and age, when we have cell phones right at our disposal, when we can say things at a whim or whatever we're feeling that day, I would say that anyone in this courtroom obviously is going to regret something they say at some point in time in their life. What I want you to do is this. That may be one snapshot in time during a day, however Guyger. But when you're deliberating this case, I'll ask you to look at the whole picture, the entire life of what you know in this case. Because the prosecution has alluded and will continue to argue that this true character is seen in some of these texts. She's cold-hearted, she is callous, she's a racist. I'll ask you to look at her whole life. When you start to consider that, I'd like you to look at LaWanda Clark. How Amber Guyger treated her. 2017, when she was in that crack house, Amber Guyger came and found her. Said, "You don't fit the profile here. What are you doing here?" Kept coming back to her. And finally went to her and said, "You've got two things can happen. You're either going to continue down this road to drugs, or you're going to get a ticket out of here." She gave her a ticket to go to a drug court. And LaWanda told you that what that made her feel. The first time in a long time she felt human again. She had hope that this person, this officer, would take interest in her. And it changed her life. She made it through that court. She made it through the program. She sought Amber Guyger out, wanted her to come to her graduation, and they're both excited about it. And she's sober today. When you want to think about how callous and cruel she may be, think about that. Now she's touched a life. Think about her friend Kate, who she met when they were both working at Fridays. They worked hard because they had dreams, and they got to know each other better. They worked 5 or 6 years together. You get to know a person when you become close and click, like Kate said they did. You spend every day working together and talk about their dreams. They became good friends. That continued. She told about one story when Amber drove all the way from Forney to Mansfield and then up to Frisco to help her get a changing table because she was expecting her firstborn. But the table dropped and Amber went and got it. It's just a little story, but little stories tell you about character. When you consider how callous and cruel, or if you believe she's a racist, think about that. Or her friends Maribel and Brenda, you've noticed in 7th grade, 9th grade, became close as best friends going to school, remained so afterwards. Started a mariachi band together. She embraced their culture. Close friends, they say they can trust her more than anyone. Think about that when you're considering how cruel and heartless, or if you believe she's truly is a racist. I want you to think about also what her family said. They're a close family. Amber was always an energetic, young, and bubbly child. We know that when she was 6, she was sexually abused. We know that she had some counseling. Her sister told us that she kept that inside. Maybe when Maribel said she didn't think Amber thought she deserved any love, that's what she she was talking about, effects of that. But she never wanted that to hold her back. She kept it inside and kept moving forward and had goals. She worked hard since she was 16. She wanted to be financially independent. She wanted to meet her goals, put herself through school. She'd work 40, 60 hours a week to achieve that, support herself. She's always been close to her mother, who you can see is not in the best of health. She checks on her as a good daughter will. Not all daughters do that. Not all sons do that. But she does, when you think about her character and what her true character is. Please reflect upon that. Reflect upon those friends when they say she's the best friend they've had, the protector, the always there for them, always ready to surprise them, doing small things for them without being asked. Those people can judge character. They can judge a good person. The punishment range, as I told you, is very wide. The legislature, for intentionally killing someone, for murder, put it as low as 5 and up to 99 years of life. Why did they do that? I believe they did that because they recognize that every fact situation is different. Every murder is different. Everyone is unique, and they wanted a jury to have a full range of punishment to decide what is appropriate in each and every individual case. Some cases should be decided on the very high end, and some cases on the low end. What do you think they were thinking about when they thought of the high end? Were they thinking of someone who has dedicated their life and tried to do the right thing, worked hard, been a public servant, who went home one day without any intention in their mind of wanting to take a life, just wanted to go home, and then made a series of terrible, terrible mistakes, and made a decision in a moment of fear, of confusion, and took a life. I don't think they were thinking about that situation when they were thinking of what's deserving and heavy in a murder case. I think they were thinking about people you've seen or heard, maybe the career criminal, someone who murders and takes a life for hate, for self-gain, who does so without remorse, who's never been a valuable member of society. I believe that's what they had in mind when they're thinking about sentencing someone to a long number of years, someone who has to be kept away from society because they're dangerous and will hurt people again. I believe that's what they had in mind. I think on the lower end, they're thinking of sometimes people make terrible, terrible mistakes. And they have to be held accountable, but their life shouldn't be over. They can still be recovered and they can still be valued. All life is precious. Every individual killed in a murder case has a precious life. So we have this wide range of punishment. I would also ask you something similar to this, and you'll keep focused just on this case. As you know, there's been immense media pressure, intensity, and scrutiny of this case. We know in this nation that there have been controversial police shootings. We know there have been citizens killed by police in unjust means, and that police officers have gone free. They should have been punished. This causes lots of heartache. This causes passions to run high. But I'll ask you, no matter how you feel about those cases, don't bring that into the jury room on this case. Look at it in its own unique circumstances. This case is not those cases. Amber Guyger wasn't on duty. She didn't pull Often John over. She didn't go there on a search warrant trying to break into his apartment. She just wanted to go home. And through these horrible series of events, she went into his apartment by mistake. She pulled that trigger in an instant she'll regret the rest of her life. She made a mistake, And yet, we know by your verdict it was an unreasonable mistake. We accept that. But it was still a mistake. She didn't go there seeking to kill it. Last thing in her mind. You may hear from the prosecution that you need to send a message. When a prosecutor asks juries to send messages, it's usually about deterrence. You have to stop other people from committing crimes by a message on your sentence. I've done that myself when I was a prosecutor. I'll submit to you, those types of verdicts when you're asking for a message are for people who are planning to commit crimes. You have a cartel coming into your city, your county, that are planning out crimes. Yes, you want to send a message to those people if you find them and convict them. If you have an organized gang who rob and terrorize neighborhoods, yes, you want to send a message to them that they should not commit those types of crimes. If you have police officers who potentially get together or bribe or shake down citizens, yes, you want to send a message to those people because they are planning crimes. But this event wasn't planned. This event is so unique, you'll never see it again in the history of the United States. How fate could come together in such a terrible way. This could have changed at any moment as these events unfolded. But they didn't. And it destroyed two wonderful people. I'll ask you to review Amber Guyger's full life. See the good in her, the love her family has for her, friends have her, the love and the good things she's done. She was a public servant. She put her life on the line every day she went to work. I don't think anyone doubts she would have given it. We know before you start deliberations that Amber Guyger is a convicted felon. She'll be a convicted felon the rest of her life. We know she's going to go to prison. We know that she's a cop, an ex-cop who's going to go to prison. We know she's a cop that's going to go to prison for a crime that's been the most publicized in this county in years. And we know she can't hide there. You can imagine what awaits her. And if and when she gets out, she'll still be marked. She can't hide because of this case. She'll be shunned. She'll be a pariah. But it's nothing what punishment will be for herself. Because Amber Guyger has a conscience. She's shown true remorse. You've heard that from her friends, her family. You saw it on the stand. She feels horrible for what she did. And for the rest of her life, every day, every hour, every minute, she'll think of what she did to both them, John, and regret it in every bit of her soul. Thank you.
You have 11 minutes, Ms. Long.
May I please the court, opposing counsel? You all had an opportunity
to hear Botham's beautiful voice. You all can take that disc back and listen to him sing. That is the voice that Alyssa, his sister, yearns to hear again. It is the voice that his father, Bertram, so desperately wants to hear again. The voice his mother, who called her Governor General, Gigi, that's what she took from that family. And for them to stand up here and talk about sudden passion is
Judge,
disrespectful.
I didn't mention sudden passion at all. I'll object to
It's
stating
in the-
that.
It's in the,
It's in the charge.
it's in the charge.
Judge, they agreed to that.
I understand,
Okay.
but it is in the charge.
But I
She
didn't
may
know.
argue the charge. Counsel did not argue sudden passion, but the state is permitted to argue the charge.
Let's talk a little bit about sudden passion. One, sudden passion is a reasonable person standard. Two, it does not apply here because Botham did not provoke his own death. He didn't provoke his own death. So take that sudden passion, move it to the side. So now let's talk about what was left after her actions, after she went in and did what she did. What was left? You have a family that will never be the same. Never. You have a community in St. Lucia that will never be the same. You heard how both of them would go out just into the community of St. Lucia, and he sang to a blind man, and he bought a lady a cake because her birthday was the same day as his mom's. How he would take his classmates from Harding University back to his home country to do great things. He was always a person of uplifting, encouraging, bettering others. In his short 26 years on this earth, he has probably done more community service, public service help than majority of us combined. You have a university, Harding University, that will never be the same. Why? Because he is not here. He is not here to visit with his family. It's unfortunate. She is going to the penitentiary. And don't let them talk about, well, she can't hide in the penitentiary, she'll be a cop in the penitentiary. That's not for you to concern yourself with. Because they have measures in the penitentiary for such things like that. So don't concern yourself with that. The only reason we all sit in this courtroom today is because of her actions. And for her actions, there must be consequences. We heard Ms. Allison talk about this past Sunday, while many of the people in Dallas County were talking about the Cowboys and Saints game, guess what this family was doing? They were warning because yet another year has passed that they were not able to celebrate Botham's birthday with him. Right before he died, what did he want for his birthday? Some Drake tickets. He wanted to go to a concert. He wanted to do normal things that a mid-20-something-year-old young man wanted to do. And he couldn't, and he can't, because she did that. She took that away from him. So this past Sunday, he would have been 28 years old. 28 years. With so much potential. His coworker Carrie said he could have written his own ticket because he was that smart, that outgoing, that educated, and everybody loved him. Everybody. This sentence that you all will give her, it can be anywhere on that spectrum. Anywhere. It just needs to be unanimous. And you think about, when you give that number, you think about those people sitting over there in red. You think about that family, that they can't call him, they can't write him, they can't go visit him. These are all things that her and her family can get to do still today, even inside of the penitentiary. You think about the Christmases, the Mother's Days, the Father's Days. Bertram said, I took my baby, I made his bottles, I took him to school every day. We talked all the time. And he has this hurt and this pain in his heart. They will never, ever be the same. It will never be the same. And so I want to leave you all with this. Bolton's pastor preached a sermon at their church, and he made this quote, and it was something that resonated with me. To him, to her, the defendant, he was just a silhouette in a room. But to anyone who ever met him, he was the brightest light in the room. And you saw that. He was Alexis' person. He was Alyssa's person. He was Brent's person. All of those individuals loved, cared, respected, and cherished every moment they had with them. So when you go back and you think about that, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to encourage you that the number you return should be no lower than 28 years. Because that would have been what both of them would have celebrated on Sunday, his 28th birthday. It should be no lower than that. It's even at the short age of 26, he had a lot of life to give. He had a lot of love to give, not only to his family, but his community, his co-workers. And it should not have had to happen the way it did. This offense, this day, today is the day. Today is the day that you tell us, you tell her actions deserve consequences. Thank you.